Welcome to Connecting Business. I'm your host, Christina Munoz. May is National Military Appreciation Month, and we are excited to show our support for America's troops and their families today. For the first time in our podcast series, we have a panel of guests. We are committed to expanding and evolving our podcast by maximizing opportunities to share relevant information with our listeners. Today, we are joined by Sergeant Kris Perkins, Gary Wynn, and Lieutenant Colonel Brian Mason. We are so excited to have you all as our guests today. Thank you for taking the time to share your stories with us. And I want to start with Sergeant Perkins. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the military.
Thank you, Christina, and I appreciate you having us this morning to get out here and share the Army and the military story. I'm currently finishing my third enlistment, which is 12 years in the Arkansas Army National Guard. I'm attached to the 106 Army Band, and I perform with them as a guitar player in that unit. And I'm, as you said, my rank currently is Sergeant First Class.
Well, we're going to have to get together and have a jam session. I play guitar, I sing in a band, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Well, very good. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to move on to Gary Wynn. Tell us about your position and your connection to the military.
Well, hello, Christina. I am Gary Wynn. I'm with Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. I am the current vice chair for the Arkansas Committee. I've been doing this since 2013. I retired out of the United States Air Force in the Arkansas Air National Guard with over 31 years. When I retired, at my retirement ceremony, I was given 3 cards from 3 different individuals to become a volunteer with ESGR. So the writing was on the wall, and I have truly enjoyed doing this. And this way I continue to help service members, their families, and the employers here in Arkansas.
What a wonderful mission that you have. You've been doing it a long time. So thank you so much for being here to really inform and educate all of our listeners today on how businesses can really appreciate the military, especially here in Arkansas. Thank you so much. And I want to turn to Lieutenant Colonel Brian Mason. Tell us about you as well as your connection to the military.
Well, hello, Christina. Thanks for having us all on the show today. I've been in uniform since 1985, a little bit of active duty as an enlisted person. Became an officer and been serving on active duty since 2002. Got a lot of deployments. I've had a lot of employers. And so I think I can bring a unique perspective to what employers can expect when they hire a guardsman or a reservist.
Very good. And that's very useful information to a lot of our listeners. So I want to go back to Kris and start with you and talk a little bit. You already mentioned about your participation in the band, but how did the military really prepare you for a career in education?
Thank you. So I'm a high school principal just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, in a community called Olive Branch, Mississippi. And I'm at Lewisburg High School. About 1,300 students are our population currently, and I've worked my way through education on the civilian side. And I'm going to say that the skills that we learn in the military are deeply laid in the success that I've had in education. Understanding, basic chain of command and how to operate with people above you, your superiors, and working with other people is very important in the school world as well. So understanding that, going through basic combat training was essential to being successful with my superiors in the civilian side, as well as when you go to basic combat training, you're working missions and different things like that in the military. You interact and work with people from all different walks of life. In the National Guard, there's people from as far south in Arkansas and north. And so there's different cultural values and that kind of stuff. And we know that in education, every kid is different. They're all unique and they have different learning styles, as well as the teachers that come to us. And so leading those students, leading those teachers it's very important to have that skill set to be able to work with people from different areas of life. And of course, resilience, the resilience that we learn by being in the military. Education's tough. It's a daily grind, but the resilience that we keep our mental aptitude every day is invaluable in my civilian and work life and in education, which I got from the military.
Invaluable. That's some pretty high props there. I was just talking to my children the other day about it's okay if you get a teacher you don't like because you may have a boss you don't like someday. So you need to learn these skills when you're younger. And it sounds like the military really was a great opportunity for you to do that. So thank you for sharing. Gary, I'm going to move on to you. And when we talk about businesses and business owners out there and managers, what advice do you have when a business wants to be considered military friendly?
Well, I think the very first thing they need to do is ensure the policies in their business allows a reserve component member to serve. A lot of times, employers, just because they haven't dealt with the military before, they think their policies that are currently written will allow them to support their military employee. One of the things they can do, and that's one of our benefits to our employers in all the states, is we can help them and guide them through the Uniform Service Employment Reemployment Rights Act. And we go out and we give briefings on this. So if they understand that and they can put that in their business policy, then it makes it so much easier for our reserve component members to go out and serve. One of the things that we make sure that happens for our service members is that they can go to training, they can deploy, and they feel safe coming back, that know they have a place to go to. And we do this by going out to the employer and again, explaining what the USARE laws are. A lot of times our employers don't understand that they can actually contact the service members' command staff or the commander or the senior leader. And this is a great opportunity to them to find out what their employee does for our national security. And we encourage our employers, if a service member invites them to a briefing with the boss day, or if the service member is getting promoted, go to that promotion, because they are part of that team to help their employee get promoted. So it's very important with the communication, and like I said, to make sure that their company policies allow a military member to serve without them feeling threatened that they won't come back and have a position.
And that is so important. And shout out to my previous employer, University of Central Arkansas, a military-friendly business. And I learned a lot about when I was hiring people through the HR group there about, how to weigh those military candidates. And we had two that were very equally matched, and one had military experience, and she got the job. And she was the better candidate by far. So, in my opinion. So it worked out great, but it really can be beneficial. And so I want to continue there with Gary, because it's not only the business that they'll have impact, but really the larger community as well. Is that right?
Oh, that absolutely. We call it like a net. It has to be the net has to be tight so that our military families and our military members don't fall through. And like I said, it's just not the employer, but it's also the community. And again, that's where we come in and play a big role, that we're at the different job fairs in communities. And we don't just sit at our table. We go out and we talk to everyone that's at the job fair. And one of the biggest things that we do is we do blind calls at different businesses throughout the community. And we go out and we'll take, and it's called a statement of support, and we ask businesses to sign this. And in that statement of support, what they're saying is they appreciate what our reserve component members do for not only the local community, but for our national security. And they agree to support them. And we ask them that they sign it and display it. The great thing about this is if we have a large company, and we'd like to do this, and when they're having a business meeting, is asked if we can come in and have 15 minutes. We do it at chambers also, and at different league events. The big thing is this statement of support can be given to every supervisor in a business. So each office can have this nice certificate framed and signed by each individual supervisor. Says, hey, we support our Guard and Reserve members and what they do. So yes, we get out there and we try to make sure that they get support from the whole community, not just for their particular employer. And with that being said, we also like to make sure that the spouse's employer is recognized. So we have a Patriot Award, not only for the reserve component member to present to a employer, but also the spouse has a Patriot Award to present to his or her employer.
How wonderful. You know that it really does take a village because you've got the spouse and the children, and all of them are impacted by military families. So we've talked about the family support, the business support, the community support. I want to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Brian Mason now to talk a little bit also about the state support that Arkansas has really given with regard to military appreciation.
Yeah, that's right. The state of Arkansas and the Arkansas National Guard is very supportive of the Guard and Reserve employers. As a matter of fact, in 2018, Governor Asa Hutchinson declared the third week of August as Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve Week. And it's really easy to see why there's such strong support and recognition of our employers. And I think it's because our employers are really the unsung heroes in our national defense. And of course, our state emergency and crisis support as well. So while those guardsmen and reservists are routinely deployed overseas, and now during the pandemic, they're consistently serving their states, often for very lengthy periods. And employers have that really difficult task of picking up the slack. And so they're often short an employee or two, and sometimes even more, depending on the type of the employer. And I'm sure you can imagine the difficulties and the challenges that presents the employers. I do think that our employers find some particular benefits to hiring guardsmen. And off the top of my head, I'd mention that they get a soldier or an airman that's been trained to uphold certain standards and values, as well as some general and specific skills training. So I think that along with the things that Sergeant First Class Perkins and Gary might have said about resilience and supervisory skills, they pay attention to detail, and generally being responsible are some of the very good reasons why an employer might find it attractive to hire a guardsman or a reservist.
Absolutely. And I know Arkansas is just one example, but states all across the nation have been so good at really appreciating the military, and whether it's through proclamations or by having business, military-friendly businesses throughout the nation. It really is something that is so important for the businesses, for the community, for the families to show. And we really do want to express our appreciation for all of you in the military. Kris, I want to turn back to you now, because as a member of the military, why are these programs and this employer support for Guard and Reserve so important for someone like you, an employee?
So I've benefited directly from the ESGR, and I'll go back to something Gary said with the Patriot Award. I actually presented that to my building level principal when I was an assistant principal at a prior high school for his support of me during times where I had to miss either a couple of days at a time or a week or two at a time for training or to support a mission. And it was well received. It made a huge impact on him. And that comes all through the ESGR. But there's so many more benefits that we benefit from, such as, we tuition assistance, things they fight for, and them helping us connect with jobs and find those transition points where you're coming out of active duty and trying to find civilian jobs. So they're vital to us to be able to maintain those relationships and find the best opportunities. And we really couldn't survive without that. It's sort of a challenge at times.
And I'm going to stick with you here, Kris, and you make a great point about your path may have valleys and mountains because you may be gone on training, or who knows what they're asking you to do. And so an employer may not understand why your resume looks different than someone else's resume. So that's a great point. I also want to talk about the transferable skills. You've already talked about how the military helped you, but let's get specific. What are some of those skills that you earned and learned through the military that have really transferred into the workplace for you?
Sure. So the number one thing we try to teach soldiers at different points throughout their career is, in the beginning, we want them to follow. We want them to follow direction well and operate well with their NCOs and their officers. So we are great team members. We're trained to work well with our peers and soldiers. But as you move through the chain of command, as you move up in the ranks, you also learn to be a great team leader. And they give us explicit training and a lot of professional development opportunities where we build those team skills, and we can directly transfer those outside of the military and into our civilian roles. It translates very well. And I owe a lot of my success in my leadership civilian side to my training that I received in the military. The other thing that we learn, a direct transferable skill, is the resilience I talked about before. We bring that out. We are taught about that. There's a specific training program that we learn that, and we're taught to struggle and push through adversity and keep our mental stamina. And finally, the biggest thing that I've learned through military training and operations is efficiency. We reflect, we do AARs every time you do a mission or an operation. You look back and you learn to reflect and better your practice every single time. And that reflection point grows us all the time. So we never stop learning, we never stop growing. And that's a military skill and mindset that I learned from the Arkansas National Guard and through my military service.
Well, and I have to mention that coming from higher education, that employers that would talk to us about our graduates, one of the biggest complaints was the lack of soft skills. And you just listed off a lot of those skills that colleges may not be teaching because they're so focused on whatever their focus is, that sometimes those soft skills are getting missed. And you just listed those that you got from the military and how they translate, and employers love and need those skills. So that's a huge point. Gary, I want to go back to you, and I want to ask you to help. Whether I'm an individual, a business, whatever I am, how can I really help support the military? What are things that we can do? My dad taught me at a young age that whenever I see someone in a military uniform, I say thank you for your service, and I try to live by that. That's pretty small, I know, but it's just showing appreciation. What can communities, businesses, what can we all do to truly show our appreciation for the military?
Well, and that's a great question. And I think, and just like you said, walking up to someone that's in uniform and thanking them for their service and the freedom that they provide you. One of the biggest things employers can do to make sure that they show appreciation is get to know your military members that are in your business, and make sure that you understand what they do. I mean, I think Chris pointed out that, he's a guitar player in the band, but the thing about it is he's still a soldier first, and he can still be called up to do other things. I'll tell this story real quick. Chris made a point about, hey, this is what the military has done for me to help me be successful on my civilian side. But we also get that into the military side, what they get from their civilian employer. So I give you a quick example. I was at a deployment location, and we had these gray market trucks, and they were always overheating. And we just happened to have a person that was in civil engineer squadron, wasn't part of his job in the military, but in his civilian job, he worked on these kind of vehicles. And he figured out that the antifreeze solution was at the wrong mix, was why it was making them overheat. So that goes both ways. We benefit on the military side, just like the civilians, the civilian employers benefit with the military skills. But as far as the community goes, is knowing who in your community are military members. And that's one of the reasons we, as ESGR, goes to chambers and talk about what's going on in the armory that's in that community. And I just give you a quick example. I live outside of BB, Arkansas, and we have a small armory here. But our folks here are great supporters for our armory here in BB when people deploy or when they're coming home, standing out on the street, waving the flags when folks are returning from deployment. And that just shows our service members how much they are appreciated and makes them feel part of the community. And one of the big things that we always talk about at the chamber is don't be afraid to go over and meet the commander and the senior NCOs and talk to them and ask to come over on a drill weekend. And it could be just as easy as bringing over some sausage biscuits for the folks that are showing up that weekend, just to show your appreciation.
Who doesn't like sausage biscuits? Some great advice, whether you're a small business or a large business. I think we can all take a lot of that to heart. I want to be sure if somebody has more questions about this, about the employer support for Guard and Reserve, where can they go? Is our website, phone number, where can they go?
So it's very easy to find us. You go out to esgr.mil. Very, very easy page to navigate. Up at the top there, it has all the different places. But one of the biggest things I want to say is, I know that I'm in the Arkansas committee, but on our webpage up at the top, it says state. And if you touch the state button, it'll drop down. It'll give you the state of the map of the United States, plus our territories. and then you can touch on that state or the territory, and then it'll bring up the state page. And on that state page will have a contact number for the state that you're looking into. Now, why I'm talking about that, and I'll give you the 1-800 number here in a second, but one of the things I always like to talk about when I have an opportunity, that we have almost 4,000 volunteers throughout the United States and the territories. And the way we get that is through word of mouth. So if anybody out there is interested in becoming a volunteer, just go to the webpage, touch volunteer, and then you can fill it out, and it gets sent to the ESGR headquarters. And then from ESGR headquarters, it'll get sent to the state of the territory, and then someone will get in contact with you. We provide excellent training. We provide mentors, and we get you out, and you get a chance to get out and help employers, help service members and their families. It gives you some great skills. It gives you a great way to network, and I highly encourage it. And one of the biggest things is that we're looking for is for some of the younger folks coming right out of, because you're talking about those soft skills, is giving them the opportunity that's coming out of college to become a volunteer in ESGR. Once we do ride-along, so if you want to take an opportunity just to come out and see what we do, we'll do a ride-along. You can come out and see us present a Patriot Award, do a unit briefing, do a employer briefing, go out and do some statements of supports. So it's a great opportunity to improve those soft skills, and again, to network and just to help out your local community. Again, those employers, the service members and their families.
That website again is esgr.mil, M-I-L, and the number?
And the number is 1-800-336-4590.
There you go. Well, great resource for everybody. Before we wrap it up, Kris, I want to go back to you one more time for your last words of advice, your parting words for communities, businesses, large and small, whoever may be listening here today.
Yeah, I just want to say we love serving our community. We know what our mission is, we know our why, but so many people in the community don't know we exist. They don't see our daily operations or our weekend warrior drills. Typically, what most civilians and citizens see is what they see on the local media or the news. And we want to encourage you to talk to us. We love sharing our values and our mission and why we do what we do. And sometimes it may look scary, but we're not scary. We're approachable, and we want to make sure that everyone knows we're here to support and serve. And so we just want to be of value to our community.
Very well said. And there might be perceptions out there, and you want to be sure that they are realistic and not based on anything false. And so seeing it for your own eyes, saying hello and introducing themselves to you, I think would be a wonderful idea. Lieutenant Colonel Mason, Gary, Kris, thank you all so very much for joining us today. I know you guys are busy, so thank you for taking time out to share with us today. And thank you for joining us today for Connecting Business. Be sure to check out all the episodes at kineticbusiness.com/connectingbusiness. We want to hear from you. Love the episode? Have a topic or guest idea? Email us at connectingbusiness@windstream.com. We look forward to sharing more stories through Connecting Business. Until next time, stay connected.